are here today with Lloyd Brunson, and he's a very interesting character, Bill. I'm on social media a lot more than Bill is. So every time I turn around, somebody on Twitter, which is now X, is commenting on you and the Supreme Court case that you all had and all of this stuff. And it's been very, very interesting to watch and see people's response to that. So,
Yeah, I'd be very interested in hearing how you got into this and why, and did you get as far as you expected to, or did you get farther, or that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, with me, it all started with Barack Obama telling the world that the foundation of the Constitution was fundamentally flawed. That really hit me hard. I thought, what the heck? He took an oath. He's a senator. He's a U.S. senator. He swore to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And here he is becoming an enemy of the Constitution. So I felt embarrassed that I hadn't really studied the Constitution. I don't even know if I'd read it all the way through ever, really. So I thought, I've got to read this document. And so I started with the executive oath because the congressional oath is not in the Constitution. So the oath he took is not in the Constitution, but the executive oath is for the president. And the congressional has a little more teeth in it. It has the protecting against foreign and domestic enemies, whereas the executive oath does not have those words in it. And so looking at it in the Constitution, the document itself, it just hit me so strong. It's like, I knew that he had sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution, but to see it in the actual document through the executive part of the Constitution, it triggered something in me where I had to dig in. And but I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't seen Bill's documentary, The Money Masters. My brother handed me a DVD set years before that, said, you've got to watch this. And I did. And that's really the foundation of everything I'm doing is Bill's The Money Masters. Without that, I wouldn't have done the lawsuit. I wouldn't have studied the Constitution, nothing. So Bill, thank you. You're the one that set me on this crazy course.
well, yeah. Well, as I said, there's a lot of commentary on social media about, what you were doing, and people are always very interested. So I think that's created an interest in the situation and also maybe caused some people to know a little more about the Constitution because of what you guys did. But that must have been a crazy experience for you. I mean, this is the Supreme Court of the United States.
Well, my brother was entangled a bit with some properties because of the subprime mortgage bundling, that went crazy.
Right.
And so he wanted to sue the banks that he felt like were taking advantage of him through this nonsense. And so he ordered a DVD set of how to file lawsuits pro se, and with the intent of not just filing it for the lower court, but do it with the intent of going to the appellate court and winning on the appellate level. So he did that a few times and learned how to be a very good paralegal. So after he watched the joint session of Congress where Ted Cruz and pled with members of Congress to join Josh Hawley and about 140 other members of Congress to simply pause for a 10-day investigation into the mountain of evidence that they had accumulated proving that we had been attacked through our election system.
Right.
And so my brother, with his knowledge, he said he thought about it for a month, that there's got to be something he could do because he was so wrapped up in it that he decided that filing a lawsuit would be something he knew how to do and would do. So he says he thought about it for a month before deciding to call me and ask me if I would be the plaintiff of this lawsuit. It's like, yeah, put a great big bullseye on me.
Yeah, right.
And so at that time, I had some of my books, different versions of my book about the Constitution. And I thought, oh, this would be a great way to introduce my concepts of a binding oath and the interpretation clause in the Constitution that's been ignored. and taxation and the eminent domain clause that has actually been used at the Supreme Court of the United States to push back against something different than eminent domain, which was a mandatory minimum wage. And so I thought, what an opportunity to get my message out there. The U.S. attorneys at least would have to read the briefs and read the complaint, and then the justices and the judges. And I thought, this is just such an opportunity for me to get my information out there through this. So I immediately accepted his offer of being the plaintiff. And that turned into two lawsuits that went to the Supreme Court. And the idea was the Supreme Court of the United States, because we knew we were going to be shot down. But it was amazing that they even let me file in federal court a damage claim lawsuit against members of Congress. You can't do that. They were supposed to, according to their rules, not even let me file. They were supposed to say, you can't file it here. You've got to go to a claims court, hire a law firm, and you've got to get permission from the government to sue the government.
Right.
But I guess no one had ever done this before, so the clerk of the court just went ahead and filed it, which they later unfiled a couple of times, which we ended up suing them. And suing the federal court and taking the federal court to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals with a complaint called a writ of mandamus. And they said, it was so funny. They said, oh, the lower court did not unfile your case. Well, the docket showed that it had been unfiled. It's like, are you kidding me? And 3 justices signed off on this at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals level. And so it's like, this is wrong. So we decided the only thing we could do was sue the 10th Circuit Court and also the Federal Court of Utah in a state court. And so they let us file, the state court clerk let us file a lawsuit against 2 federal courts. And when you do that, you ask for the damages that you were asking for in your lawsuits, because when you interfere with someone's lawsuit, you can be liable for the damages you claim, regardless of the merits of the case. You can be liable because you're stopping, you're interfering with someone's due process rights. And so the total was $5.8 billion. Here's a $5.8 billion lawsuit in state court. And the judge just sat on it. I'm thinking, he doesn't know what to do with this. This is a time bomb. Yeah. And so finally, and I'll try to keep it short because there's a lot of fun backstory to all of this. U.S. attorneys finally complained in a document to the state court saying, come on, make a decision, because Brunson has filed a full summary judgment motion. And we had evidence on that one because my brother filed an identical lawsuit where the U.S. attorneys admitted that the courts had filed my case. So we had concrete evidence for a full summary judgment motion. Yeah. And so so
you have no legal training. Your brother is not an attorney. Have you had any help?
No, if we had, we wouldn't have been dumb enough to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we set a precedence because it turned out where when we sued the 2 federal courts, even though we lost, a couple of weeks later, they got thinking, wait, we better reverse our decision. So without them even having to reverse their decision, they did voluntarily. And the Chief Justice of the Federal Court of Utah ordered the chief clerk to move this forward with the issuance of 387 summonses. And so they were all delivered to the U.S. attorneys, and we were back on track, headed for the Supreme Court. And just real quickly, we were able to bypass the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals because we found a Supreme Court of the United States had a special Rule 11 that if you could show them evidence that this case was of imperative public importance, they would allow you to bypass the 10th Circuit, which is normally required, which they did in my case. And they filed it under their Rule 11, which is stamped on the face of it, which I have printed a bunch of those in case people want an exact copy of the appeal to the Supreme Court. So I believe this is probably the only personal damage claim against a government or government agency ever filed in the Supreme Court of the United States under their Rule 11. I've yet to see any evidence that any other case has been similar to this has been filed under Rule 11.
Yeah, this is pretty neat that what you sent me.
Oh, yeah, I said that's the summons and complaint. That's Kamala Harris's summons on the cover. The complaints are identical, 387. So, but of course, the summons on the cover is individualized for each defendant. So I thought Kamala Harris would be a fun one to print up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever hear from her?
No, the U.S. attorneys represented them. The U.S. attorneys represented all 387 defendants, so they are not allowed to communicate with me whatsoever. So
Right.
people say now, well, where is it? It's like, well, I was denied a hearing. When you are denied a hearing, it's typically dead and done, but not always. If you Google it, you'll see that the Supreme Court has in the past brought back denied petitions, brought them back to life after even years of sitting on the shelf.
Wow.
So many miracles have happened to get us to this point, like the unfiling and then filing and all this stuff. And the last miracle is the Supreme Court is whenever there's a lawsuit against federal officials or federal agencies, the U.S. Solicitor General's job is to supervise and basically represent the defendants, but not in the normal way. He's supposed to bring justice to the court, even if the government is guilty. He's supposed to take that position if he can see they're guilty. And this new U.S. Solicitor General has replaced a far left. Her name was Elizabeth Prelogar, U.S. Solicitor General, and now it's Trump's number one top Supreme Court attorney who's actually argued in favor for the President Trump before he was president successfully in the Supreme Court. So he is now the U.S. Solicitor General. His name is Dean John Sauer, and he has jurisdiction over this case. And at the right time, working with President Trump or not, he can get another conference, get it back on the docket for a conference and then for a hearing. So people say, "Oh, Brunson is just saying it's alive, it's dead, blah blah blah." Well, no, the Supreme Court has the power to do it. So it's a valuable tool, weapon, I guess you could say, for righteousness, an exposure to let this thing move forward. And it could move forward in the most incredible way. It could move forward without even determining that the defendants are guilty by it being sent back to federal court, remanding it back to federal court for discovery, to find out about those members of Congress. Was there a conspiracy? Were they talking amongst themselves? What was their motivation to not pause for a simple 10-day investigation? And it could expose a tremendous amount of information. And as the plaintiff, I have the power, working with the U.S. attorneys, I would have the power to remove any of the defendants that I wanted to, as I negotiated with them to help in the investigative process, the discovery process, or whatever, to make this work. So I've even had a former U.S. congressman tell me that he thought that would be the best thing, and there would probably need to be some special congressional committee helping me do that.
Yeah.
Let's back up a little bit and simplify what this is.
This is
uninitiated. What is this? What did you do?
Okay, well, the 2020 election, when all the ballots, envelopes of ballots had come in from all the different states, the Congress is then supposed to open up the ballots and just count the ballots, open up the envelopes and count the ballots. And so Ted Cruz says, let's not open up these ballots yet because there's evidence of fraud. These could be fraudulent. And if they are, we need to take action to prevent a huge security breach that looks like is happening here. And so because Ted Cruz only got 145 members of the House and Senate to support a 10-day pause for an investigation, my brothers and I decided to file a lawsuit against all those that did not support the investigation, accusing them of a security breach, which created a situation where I couldn't participate in a honest and trusted constitutional election. So making it a personal damage claim, I was claiming that they deprived me of my right to participate in an honest and sound election, amongst some other things that I complained about. And so we decided to file this lawsuit, and they ask you can ask for real damages and punitive damages. And we thought, well, how can you ask for real damages? So we just thought we'd just put punitive damages and let the court decide if they want to award anything, if anything at all, or all of it. And so to make it hurt, we decided to make it $1 million for each part of the complaint, called a cause of action. I haven't looked at it so long. I think there's 6 or 7, but it totals about $2.9 billion when you come to $1 million per cause of action. And then 3 of them we decided it should hurt a little more for them. So we made it $25 million. And I think that was Mike Pence, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. We made it $25 million. So there it is. It's at the Supreme Court, and if the Solicitor General felt and the President got together and felt like it was time to question all of the members of Congress and ask them why they didn't support an investigation when there was absolute proof that we had a huge security breach, President Trump retrued the case twice.
Yeah.
And the second time he did it was August 19th, 2023. And before that, when he retruthed an article, he took some words out of the complaint. And the words were, this could be considered an act of war. So President Trump has looked at this in a very serious light and sees the very significant lawsuit that this is, that could really break open and expose corruption and enforce the binding oath, which is part of the complaint. We need to have a binding oath. And the U.S. attorneys, and one of their defenses was these guys have absolute immunity. It's like, well, how can Congress have absolute immunity when Article 6 of the Constitution is very clear with the words, they shall be bound by oath to this Constitution? So that's one of the concepts in my book. And so I was excited that was getting out there and raising public awareness. So a little over 100,000 people have written letters so far, at least that many letters. We tell people not to duplicate letters,
right,
unless they really feel inspired to do it.
Yeah.
But so over 100,000 letters so far. And I'm just excited about the end result that could happen with the correct justices, and also the exposure if it's remanded back to federal court. And I'm super excited about the knowledge. The complaint is it's an expose in a way on the Constitution, bringing to light certain clauses and parts of the Constitution that have been, I think, intentionally ignored, intentionally hidden ever since the signing of the document.
Well, that's not the only thing that was unusual. Of course, we had the COVID, we had the mail-in ballot situation, but we also have, it doesn't, tell me I'm right or wrong, doesn't the Constitution also say that it's the legislature of the states that are supposed to set laws concerning elections?
Well, that was a defense. I talked to Mike Lee a little bit. My brother talked to Mike Lee a little bit, and we asked him why he didn't support Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and 140 other members of Congress in pausing for a 10-day investigation. He says, well, no, it's just our job. That's up to the states. And it's like, there's a term and there's a legal term. It's fraud vitiates everything, right? Well, I'd say treason and fraud vitiate everything. And so there is there is cause.
Well, and my point is that election laws in different states were changed by the Secretary of State or the governor or the Attorney General of that state, and the legislatures just didn't address it. Nobody addressed that issue, but they don't have the right to do that. And
well, Mike Lee's argument was it's a constitutional responsibility. And I'm thinking, wait, fraud and treason changes that a bit. And why would he put himself in a superior position to Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, who know the Constitution, I'm sure, as well as he does, and 140 other members of Congress that strongly felt that there had been a huge security breach affecting the safety of this country, and that this should be looked into. And a 10-day investigation had been done before in history, and it wouldn't have slowed anything down unless they had found cause, which they would have, to stop the corruption that happened with Joe Biden. Can you imagine if these guys had just done their job and said, let's have a 10-day investigation exposing the fraud, and get rid of the 4 years that Biden presided over, and the corruption that happened because of him, the deaths, the destruction of property, and the security problem, the borders.
Right. And in the atmosphere at the time, and with the people at the time, my fear is, had that happened, they would have not found any fraud. It would have been completely, oh no, this is completely. So in a lot of ways, you're kind of glad maybe they didn't, because they would have just like when Bill Barr said, we didn't find any voter fraud. They weren't looking for it. He didn't look for it. So that's why he didn't find it. So
I think that kind of directs my thoughts to where at the beginning of this lawsuit, my brother, who was the paralegal guy, wanted to make this about Trump won the election. And so my brother Roland visited with the U.S. attorneys, visited with them, and they were very open with how they felt and what their position was. And my brother came back to the table and says, we cannot make this about Trump won. We have to make this about, regardless of the results, an investigation should have happened. And that's, I felt like, the high road that we took and should take. And that is, if the Democrats really wanted to put to rest all this, they claim is nonsense about people claiming, the election deniers, if they were really concerned about that, they would have said, yeah, let's move forward with an investigation so we don't have a bunch of election deniers. So that was the point that we made, and the focus we made is that it's not about the outcome. It's about, when there's investigation that's needed, it should happen regardless of whether they find fraud or not. And so,
right. But my fear is they would conveniently not find it. In other words,
well, maybe not. I thought about that with President Trump. How did he win the last election? I didn't think he was going to win because the fraud is so prevalent. Especially look at it today in California. I mean, they count the votes, they create the ballots, and so it's like he made it too big to rig. Right. And so you just can't say, no, we're not going to investigate because we're afraid of the outcome. You can't do that. You have to say, let's just do whatever we can to move forward.
Right. Well, yeah. And there's still one of the things that's happened since then, talking about fraud in the elections, is the situation in Venezuela, where they were able to uncover this huge, I don't even know what to call it, central election office where they were affecting the results of elections all over the world from Venezuela. And that situation. And then you have other situations like Iran, where there are all kinds of secrets and there's all kinds of information coming out from other countries. President Trump did actually make a statement on Truth and on X recently that the evidence that they now have is overwhelming, and at some point it will come out. But they gathered a lot of evidence in Venezuela when they went in there.
Well, yeah, and I have a friend who works for an intelligence company, and he said that they recovered 30 million ballots in containers in this last election and kept them from entering the system, and that didn't happen in 2020. Right. And that was really what was the tipping point, and that might have been what would have been discovered if they had been able to investigate. So without those 30 million ballots, it was too big to rig, and that's why President Trump won in this last election, in my opinion.
Right. Well, they also had attorneys in every state, and attorneys who were jumping on some of the situations more quickly than they did in 2020. I think they learned a lot from 2020.
Yeah. Well, there was also the story about the kid who drove a tractor trailer full of blank ballots from Long Island into Pennsylvania. And that was kind of the end of the story. I mean, so what happened?
Well, they were previously, they weren't blank. They were filled out. They had already.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. They were pre-filled out for Biden.
Yeah. Right. From New York. What does New York have to do with Pennsylvania?
Well, it's just that's where a big printing operation was.
Right. So, yeah, there's all kinds of things that have come out since then. Are you expecting this to go forward? Because you said that now there's a new Solicitor General. Are you thinking that it might go forward, or is this the end of the road?
Well, no, it certainly has the potential of that. It's really up to the Solicitor General, and President Trump could have a big influence on that, where they could at least get a conference. I'm sure the Solicitor General could get another conference. I only received one conference. My petition for another conference, called a petition for rehearing, was denied without a conference. And so that looks like an administrative kind of loophole in the fact that over 100,000 letters have come in. I think it would be very easy for the Solicitor General to file some kind of a petition to the court to give me, and being supported by 100,000 people or whatever letters, to put me back on the docket with a conference. And if I were able to meet with him about that, I would say, give us some time to raise public awareness, because the court of public opinion is just as important. People have to be aware of what this is and what it's about, so they can support it and see what's happening. And I can absolutely see a conference with like a 90 or more day conference date, so that we could, instead of getting 100,000 letters, we get 1 million plus, and really raise awareness about what's happening.
Well, especially in the light of even today, President Trump is still fending off these mindless interpretations of oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. There wasn't really anything to it,
Right.
and he goes to the ceiling at this point, and
Right.
rightfully so.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something has got to be done to semi-right the wrong that was done.
Right.
To nail
yeah.
down the fact that
Yes.
yes, there was something wrong that went on.
Well, and Ketanji Brown should not be on the Supreme Court.
That's right. And that raises another question. I've talked to attorneys who have supported this whole operation, this thing that we're doing, this petition, and I've discovered, and I didn't know this, that the Supreme Court of the United States has they have the legal authority, of course, the power they have, but there's actually where they have documentation that encourages them that if they face a situation with an appeal or whatever, that they can refer it to a military tribunal. And so this could go military, because as President Trump in the first True Social support of this said that this could be considered an act of war, and those words are in the complaint. This could absolutely go to a military level. But I look at it like God is intervening, and I look at it like God is using President Trump. He's not a perfect man, but he's cleaning up things internationally. And as that's cleaned up, more credibility he'll have to move forward on cleaning things up internally. And I don't think he's going to leave office with a chance of it not being cleaned up, because his family's at risk. He's at risk. We're all at risk. And so with God's help, something's going to happen.
So you wrote a book on the Constitution. And when did you write that? In the middle of all of this, or did that come first?
No, 2010. In 2010, when I heard Barack Obama tell the world that the foundation of the Constitution was fundamentally flawed, that's what got me going.
Okay.
And because I'd watched Bill's The Money Masters,
Right.
that I tell people to go watch on YouTube, I understood that you cannot understand the Constitution if you don't understand what Bill exposed in The Money Masters. You've got to understand money. Otherwise, we're going to continue to borrow money into existence. We'll never get out of the slavery we call federal debt. And so that's what started me. I had several different versions, and I came up with the 7 discoveries. So my discoveries are in this. This is my final, I think, version. Maybe I'll do a book outlining and getting in more talking in more detail about the different concepts. But I love some of these concepts. The interpretation clause, I could tell you about that, and of course the clause that defines and prohibits socialism and others.
Oh, geez. Do you have a website? Is there a place where people could go to order your book? Or
Yes. 7 discoveries. 7discoveries.com. TrumpConstitution.com should take people to 7discoveries.com.
Okay.
At 7discoveries.com, you can go there. And I was able to get some help printing a bunch of these.
Yeah.
With my picture. So I have about 50,000 of these that I can let get out there. I call it the 38 special. You get a 38 of these perfect bound little books for $38 with free priority mail shipping. If people want to do that, they can go to 7discoveries.com.
7.
Coffee
is it
table.
the number 7, or is it spelled
Number
out?
7. Both should work, but I like to say the number 7.
7 discovery. Okay, we'll put that in the description box when we put it up, so people can. We'll put a link so people can do that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just have to get a plug in for my favorite topic, and that is that the money solution to this is so simple. We stop printing the phony money, and it's not a new experiment. It's the money that is still viable, valid money today. They never killed it off. The United States note. That's all you got to do. Just change back the United States note, and we eventually wipe out the debt.
Right.
Isn't that worth pursuing, or at least questioning?
I've told so many people to watch your video, Bill, and I've shared that message with so many people, even economists, PhD economists, where they finally, after talking to me, they go, wow, you're right. I was talking to Steve Moore about this in 2015. And I said, if you could enforce the nonprofit status of the Federal Reserve, that would wipe out taxation. I said, to really simplify it in terms. He says, yeah, you're right. I'll read your book on the plane. So I found that it's more difficult for people who are educated to believe it than people who have a fresh, open mind. And so I think it's more difficult to believe than to understand. To believe that we could have been so deceived into thinking that borrowing money into existence and that the Federal Reserve, is part of the government is just so, it's so entrenched in us. But when that is exposed, I think it's the modern day money changers, and it's going to come tumbling down as the message gets out. And Bill, your work has been so, like I said, I would not be here. I would not be involved in the lawsuit. I wouldn't have written anything about the Constitution if it hadn't been for your incredible, the Money Masters, that I've watched more than once. I've just been watching it again. It's like watching it for the first time. When you watch it again, it's like, oh my gosh, I've forgotten so much. There's so much here. And so, thanks to my brother for handing me that DVD set of the Money Masters that you produce. It's just like, it's timeless, and it's the most incredible video. If people want to understand government and economics, whatever, watch that. That is it. It's just so amazing. It's just everyone should see it.
And it was surprisingly popular too.
Really, and at one time it was the number one, I believe. Yeah, and it's like it should be in every school. Everyone should see it. It's the big emperor with no clothes. It's so, and no, I'm gonna be working. I'm talking to people, high profile people, and try to get them. This is General Michael Flynn took my book, the coffee table size. It has President Trump's picture on the back. He ordered 500 of these for his Mar-a-Lago event, December 16th, which he invited me to participate in, and I was there. Wow. And he said he read the whole book and loves it. And it gets into that, Bill. It gets into the money and the Federal Reserve. So yeah, once that's exposed, goodbye federal debt. Yeah. The Constitution's a tax-free system, and with Stephen Moore, chief economics advisor for President Trump for 4 years, and I think I'll be seeing him at some event coming up pretty soon. I want to have another chat with him. But once we get that fuse lit, once it goes, it's just going to explode. And everyone will be watching that video and going, Bill is the savior of our economics. Really, that Money Masters 3-hour video is just, it is like, man, transforming the world.
Well,
I think I'm going to die in poverty before.
Oh no, we've got to fix that. We got to figure out a way to monetize and partner up and get some money so we can stay healthy and wealthy.
You're talking about this big lie and all these stuff, of course, with the Money Masters. I think COVID made us hugely aware of a lot of other lies that we've been told, about not just vaccines, but then you go, all of these poisons they're putting in the food, the poisons they're put, and thank goodness for RFKJ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. COVID affected this too. Right. When I'm suing 387 defendants on Capitol Hill, it was during the COVID time. I could not hire a process server. I couldn't get a deputy to go in there. I couldn't get anyone to go in to serve. So you know what the federal court did? They said, we will have the U.S. Marshal Service do it at no charge to you. It's like the federal court was helping us. They've helped us on several levels. It's unbelievable. And I think they learned a few things from the lawsuit and saw that that was the right thing to do. And of course, we scared them too into helping them see that they were opening themselves up to more lawsuits, because the judicial umbrella protection doesn't cover you if you start doing something on an administrative level. And unfiling the case, I think, could be considered an administrative kind of libel action that they created. So I think that was part of the motivation for them to refile and move it forward.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's give you an opportunity. We're coming up on half an hour, so I just want to be sure to give you an opportunity to talk about anything else that you that's on your mind or that you feel is important, especially messages that you want to get out.
Oh, sure. Well, I think it's the Achilles heel that we're talking about here. Just these concepts getting out there where people see that there's a binding oath requirement and other concepts about socialism and, what you've presented and taught with the Money Masters. So the concepts in this book that's getting out there, it's about 50,000 so far out there. And this is one of my favorites. And so, and there's also Did I send you the pocket version too? I think I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, then I've got my pocket version that you can get a bunch of these for that 38 special. I like 38 special. 38 of these for $38 with free priority mail shipping. And then of course the complaint, Kamala Harris's summons and complaint is available. I have a few hundred of those that I printed. And then of course the appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States, they like it perfect bound. You don't have to do a perfect bound, but they prefer it so they can put it on the shelf. So it's easy to take off when they need to take it back on the shelf. And so I have a bunch of these. It's an exact replica. It has the Supreme Court of the United States stamp on it with the date. And of course it says Rule 11, as you can see right there. I'm sure it's the only damage claim lawsuit with a Rule 11 that made it to the Supreme Court. And so people want to get educated, they can go to 7discoveries.com. I think I even have some Brunson Brothers music on there too available.
Oh, good.
I mean,
That's
this
good.
is especially disturbing to me right now with the way socialism is becoming acceptable. I mean,
right. Bill, you think that members of Congress or J.D. Vance would hold up the Constitution and say, hey, folks, the first 10 amendments were not defined as the Bill of Rights. They were defined as further declaratory and restrictive clauses to the Constitution. And if you look at the last line of the Fifth Amendment, that declaratory restrictive clause, it's very clear. Nor shall your private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Socialists out there, Bernie Sanders, hey, grab your Constitution, get one of these, open it up, and look what you swore to uphold and defend. Mayor Mamdani, guess what? We've just discovered, we've overcome our ignorance and discovered that you swore to defend us against socialism. You took an oath, a constitutional oath, to protect New York City from socialism. Look at the document you swore to uphold and defend, buddy.
Way to go. Way to go.
Come on.
That just needs to get out there a lot more.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm working on. And so General Flynn, that was a great breakthrough. I'm talking to Glenn Beck about and I'm going to share, I've got to share more with him about being on his show. I've already talked to him about being on the show. And I think when he comes on board, he's going to do us some power, really push this to get the word out and fulfill Thomas Jefferson's edict that, knowing the truth, that's the way to correct constitutional abuse, is knowing these power clauses in the Constitution. When I first started doing this, I thought, when I first started reading the Constitution and I'd watched your video, Bill, the Money Masters, I thought everyone that knows the Constitution must know this stuff. And so I met with the owner of the National Center for Constitutional Studies and I shared my concepts with him. He says, I've never heard this before. We want to publish it. Let us publish it. And I got thinking later, no, I'm just going to do my own book. So one of my concepts that I love, I experimented with, I printed up like 50 books and I was at a trade show with a friend. He let me stand in front of his table. It was a conservative trade show, maybe a gun show. And I would stop people. And I remember stopping this gentleman and I said, I've discovered something in the Constitution that I believe is revolutionary, that has never been publicized or published before. And he took out his NCCS version of the Constitution that has George Washington's picture on it. He kind of shook it at me. He says, you think you can show me something I don't already know in this? I says, I think I can. He says, well, if you can, I'll give you some money and I'll take one of your books. I said, okay. And I says, well, the first 10 amendments were really defined as further declaratory and restrictive clauses. And I said, and the 9th Amendment, I say, is the interpretation clause. When I discovered this and thought about it, it was a spiritual experience. It was like God speaking through the Constitution with his word for word statement, the 9th Amendment in one sentence. And it goes like this: the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. I said, in other words, no interpretation of the document that would compromise our rights or deprive us of our rights that are unalienable is legal or lawful interpretation in the document. Everything that's interpreted in the Constitution has to align with supporting the unalienable rights that we have as children of God. And he looked at me, he pulled out his wallet, handed me a 20, took a book and walked away. And I thought, this is it. People are going to respond to this message. And people have since that time. So over 50,000 books have gone out there.
Wow.
There's 17,000, close to 18,000 people who have ordered the book already on my Shopify site. These are people who have given a credit card and ordered so far. So the word is getting out there. And it's gaining popularity right now, that 38 special, where people are getting 38. You can't get them printed for that. It would cost you to go have a few hundred printed, cost you $5, $6 a piece because they're perfect bound. And so to get 38 for $38 with free priority mail shipping, it's getting the word out there. So I feel motivated and excited. And I think at some point I'm going to have a picture of President Trump holding it up and just telling everyone to get one, or maybe he'll get Congress to fund this going to every home in the United States, which I think is doable. I think, and I'm actually working on something with Mike Lindell to achieve that. Yeah, we found there's a sponsor with pretty deep pockets that it looks like wants to fund at least the beginning of getting this out there. Wow. And so this is hardbound. It's gold foil on the back, and I think it would be great. And I have a quote from President Trump on the back here. You know, as president, my highest duty is to protect the American people and the Constitution of the United States. And this says Q&A in the back. It's a constitutional education, questions and answers in the back. Some of these questions have never been published before or publicized before. So that is, I think, the best education for the Constitution there is on the planet. And it only takes about 20 minutes to do that. Then you got I put the congressional oath on the inside cover because the congressional oath is not in the Constitution. The executive oath is. You can see that. Mm-hmm. Now you got the 10 Commandments in the back. I did that for Nancy Pelosi because I know she loves the 10 Commandments.
She doesn't even
We're so
know.
honored to have you come and visit with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Bill, and it's an honor to visit with you guys.